All right, welcome to Studio 58A live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and comments so we can put them to our guest. And like how we have your attention, do us the same favor we always ask. Share this video with a friend or two or 5,000 so we can have a nice, lively discussion. Now, we are here today to discuss a topic that people have been requesting us to cover on numerous occasions, especially persons in the diaspora. That topic is how to adopt a child in Jamaica. Today, to help us fully understand this issue, is here with us today is Miss Lisa Hill, Adoption Officer for the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and she's responsible for the Western Division, right?
Yes.
All right. So, and the Child Protection and Family Services Agency is the agency specifically responsible for overseeing the adoption process in Jamaica. One of many, but the primary one. All right. So, Miss Hill, glad to have you. As I'm sure this is going to generate a lot of interest and a lot of feedback because this is something that people have been asking us about on numerous occasions. Now, I'm going to start with the very first question. Who can adopt a child in Jamaica?
No, in Jamaica, an adult who is over the age of 25 years can adopt. However, for family members, and family members are classified as sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they can be younger than 25 years. So they can adopt a relative once they're younger than 25.
Now, then the question then is, who can be adopted? Which, naturally we think children, but, age range
so
is that kind of thing.
Who
Who can
it has to be a child between 6 weeks old and a day before the 18th birthday. Because at 18, you're classified as an adult.
Right, so you can't, it has to be above 6 months.
6 weeks.
6
weeks old, right. So we do not accept applications for babies who are under 6 weeks
Is
old.
there a particular reason for that? Because I would imagine there are persons who might feel, for example, that, this person might have a child, not necessarily and you want to just hand over the child immediately.
Well, in cases like that, all right, a lot of times persons will come to us pregnant saying they want to give up their child for adoption. However, what we have noticed over time is that persons having had their baby, some of them just look at the baby and say, hey, I really don't want to give up this child for adoption anymore. So that 6-week window is also a period in which the birth mother can also bond with the child and really decide if adoption is really what she wants to do.
It's kind of some kind of insurance in case the parents decide to change their mind, so to speak.
But they still have the option of changing their minds up to the point where the matter goes before the court.
Okay.
Right.
Now, I understand that there's a difference between, or let me ask you, is there a difference between fostering and adopting?
Yes, definitely. No, children who are fostered are wards of the state, meaning we have primary responsibility, so we oversee. So if you have a foster child in your home, you'll still have a CPFSA officer coming in, checking on the child, doing home visits, school visits. So that child lives with you, but we are still primarily responsible for the child. When a child is adopted, that's a legal process by which parental rights are transferred. So there's this finality. So our agency would no longer be involved. You have adopted a child, process is finished, this child is now legally yours.
All right, so walk us through the process. What exactly happens when a person decides, okay, I want to adopt a child? Where do I begin? What do I do? That kind of thing.
All right. Well, we're in the information age and everything is online. So someone can visit our website at www.childprotection.gov.jm. And then they'll click on adoption forms, and then they will download the adoption guide, which provides all the information they need. In addition to the required documents, they'll download the application form, they'll download the child medical form and the adult medical form. Now, having completed these forms and having gotten all the necessary documents, then they can be submitted to any of our parish offices. Having done that, once we ensure that all documents are there, then the file is numbered and we will contact the applicant, after which we'll do all the necessary interviews.
Now, what kind of interviews are we talking about here?
All right, so we interview the applicants. which is called the Adoptive Applicant Assessment. We get some information on their background, their education, hobbies, their interests, parenting skills. We also, very, very importantly, we have to interview the birth parents, and this is to obtain their consent to the adoption, which is extremely important because birth parents do need to know that by consenting to an adoption, they're surrendering all parental rights.
Okay, what are some of the other interviews? Yes,
We
continue.
also interview the child, the ones who are old enough. So we get their views, how they feel about the adoption, if they want their name to be changed, the kind of relationship they have with the person adopting, and stuff like that.
Okay. And so you go through and you do all these interviews, and I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's not that simple. It doesn't just end there. What else happens after that?
So having conducted all the interviews, having gotten the consents, now after we interview the birth parents, they are given consent forms, which are to be signed in the presence of a justice of the peace. Having gotten those consent forms returned to us, having done all the interviews, home assessment, then we will compile a report, and then the complete file is submitted to the adoption board, who then makes the decision whether or not that case is to be approved for adoption.
All right, and then that person, once the adoption board makes the determination, that's
the next step
right.
is court. An adoption is not finalized unless the matter is taken before the court, and the court takes place in the parish in which the child resides. So having gotten the approval, then an appointment is made with the court, and the matter is presented to the judge, and then a ruling is made as to whether or not the adoption is to be granted. But most times, once the board approves the case, most times the court has absolutely no problem granting the adoption.
So on the flip side, how does a parent put up their child for adoption?
All right, so a parent can approach any of our parish offices, and if they say to us, I'm having difficulties, I have a child, I'd love to give up for adoption, an intake is done in terms of we gather all the necessary information. We will then conduct a social inquiry report, full investigation. The matter is placed before the court. So the child would essentially be made a ward of the state for us to actually have that right to place that child for adoption. So the child would become a ward of the state.
All right, and then you basically have that child in
right,
whichever
placed
system.
on the list, placed on the adoption list, because we have a number of applicants who have applied to us requesting children from us.
And is you guys make the determination, or is it? The question I ask is it that the parent would come, for example, to a state home or whatever and see a child and decide that, okay, I'd like to adopt that child, or is it that you go to them and say, we have this list of children?
Unfortunately, we know that a lot of persons will see this scenario playing out, like in the US, where persons are able to go in and they look at photos and they will go in and look at children. But with our system, we don't really do open adoptions in Jamaica. So what is done, once a child is available for adoption, now on the waiting list is really what you would say first come, first serve. So when persons apply, let's say you are next in line for a child to be placed with you. The child is actually introduced to you. So let's say you want a child between the ages of 0 to 5, female. Female is available, then you are introduced to this child. Having been introduced to the child, then you'll be able to spend some time with that child to see if this is really a fit. And if you are okay, then with approval, on the approval of the adoption board, the child is placed with you on a 3-month supervisory basis. So for 3 months, we will check to ensure that the child is really a good fit for your family structure and ensure that the child is adjusting and everything. Once the 3 months are up and we realize that yes, this is a good fit, then we recommend that that adoption be finalized.
So what are some of the criteria you use to measure just how fit a parent or a couple or persons are to adopt a child? That you're placing a child with for somebody who you consider a good fit.
All right. So when you apply, the documents that you submit to us, they are going to include police record, references. Part of our assessment too is your home assessment. So we visit your home. We have to ensure that your home environment is conducive to the rearing of a child. And then basically we just really see how the interaction really takes place. Is the child comfortable with you? Is the child comfortable with the others in the home? You know, does this child feel at home, feel warm, feel welcome? So we look for things like that.
Curious question. I mean, it just came. Let's say a person has. Do you look for I guess the question I have is if a person has children already, is that a better, no, not so much a deterrent, does that make them more appealing?
Not necessarily.
As opposed to a person who may not have children or something like that.
No.
Or a person who has many children.
No. It doesn't make them any more fit, because I mean, look at it now. If somebody having their first child. So it would just be like having your first child. So we really don't look for parenting experience in terms of persons already having children. It doesn't give you an advantage. No, it's not.
All right. So we know that this happens. Does the process change if a person resides overseas and is interested in adopting a child from Jamaica?
All right. The difference is with persons overseas, they are granted what is called a license to adopt. Now, what a license does, it allows the person it gives the person permission to take that child overseas where the adoption will be finalized.
Okay, as in through them, whichever the courts of whichever jurisdiction.
Right, so they will still submit all their documents to us. We will still do all the necessary interviews, present the case to the board, and if it's approved, they also come to court, but they are granted a license instead of an adoption order. So they are able to use that license to take the child overseas on the approval of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services.
Whichever, UK, wherever the case may be.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, ideally, how long should the process last, and what generally holds it up if there are any hitches? But let me ask you, ideally, how long should the process last?
Ideally, it should not last longer than 6 months. So we can complete an adoption within 3 to 6 months. Now remember, in order for your case to be started, you must have submitted all your documents. Now, I mean, issues that can hold up your case can be the reluctance of birth parents. So let's say a birth parent comes for an interview and they take a long time in returning the consent forms. Those are things that can hold up the process. But from where we sit, we can complete an adoption within 3 to 6 months.
Now, what is the challenge that generally tends? Because, I mean, one of the consistent challenges I hear is that persons are placed on the waiting list and they've been there for years before they're able to get a child, or if they do get a child, that something happens.
Yeah, that continues to be a challenge because we don't have as many children as the number of applicants.
Really, no?
That we have. The misconception that persons have is that all the children who they see in children's homes are free for adoption. And that is a misconception. They are not all free.
So
that is what will hold up the process.
So you're saying that there aren't as many children, because I mean, people tend to think you see these children on the street, in the homes, and in difficult circumstances all over.
Right, but there are numerous circumstances why children come into care, and as I said, not all of them are free for adoption, and we can't place a child on the adoption list if that child is not free. Remember that adoption is a legal process. We're talking about parental rights. So there are a number of things that we have to do to ensure that these children are free.
No, all right. Let me ask you, one of the things I've heard, or one of the reasons I've heard that slows the process down is that you have parents who are not necessarily inclined to relinquish their parental rights to the adopting family. And that might prevent things from going through smoothly or seamlessly. Is that a legitimate challenge, or is that something?
Yes, all right. That's you are referring to children in state care.
Right.
Yes, that is a challenge for us. However, if a child has been in state care, let's say over 2 years, there has been no visits, their parents have shown no interest, what we do is we first do a search, a physical search. So we'll visit the last known address for the birth parent. If we can't find them, then we do send a registered mail, and then finally we will do send an advertisement. Now, in some cases, we will find the birth parent and they will say to us, oh no, I'm not giving up my child for adoption. But yet your child has been with us for a number of years.
Right.
So what we do, we give the parents an opportunity to come up with a plan. So if you're saying to us, I'm not relinquishing my child for adoption, we give you the chance, okay, come to us with a plan. Tell us how you will clothe this child, how you will feed this child, how you will educate him or her, pay for medical. Normally we give them like a 6-month period to come to us with a plan. Having failed to do so, we can ask the court to dispense with the right of the rights of the parents.
You can ask the court to take that step.
Yes, and only the court can dispense with the rights of a birth parent.
All right, let me switch tack to something that's I guess very topical as well. We find that people have been saying that the adoption process is so frustrating that many of them resort to what we know as informal adoption, or black market adoption,
no,
something
don't.
like that.
It
sounds a lot worse when it's where basically parents just come to a pregnant woman or a family and just say, look, I will take this child and take care of the child and so on, and we'll just leave it at that, and that would be as simple as that.
That has been happening, but I mean, let's say an applicant comes to us saying, I have this child, I met this mother through so-and-so, and I am now caring for this child who I wish to adopt. We process the case, and the adoption board really makes a determination as to whether or not that case is to be approved. But persons do that.
So what is your advice, or what do you have to say on that? I mean, I'm sure that's not exactly the ideal situation.
That's not the ideal situation.
You need to convince persons that your way is the proper way.
Our office, as I said, there is a CPFSA office in every parish. If you are in a situation, if you believe that you cannot provide for your child, if you are saying that by giving up my child for adoption, I'm acting in my child's best interest, visit one of our offices and say to us, this is the situation, I would love to surrender my child for adoption, and we will take the necessary steps.
All right, so we're here talking with Miss Lisa Hill. We're talking on the topic of adopting a child in Jamaica, navigating the adoption process. Just taking the time to check in with those of you who are watching online: Margaret Monroe, Colleen Johnson, Ann Karen Daly, Judith Housen, Vanessa Silvera. Thank you all for your comments. We really, really do appreciate it. This is your show. You get the opportunity to ask our resource person all the questions. She's right here. We've seen lots of questions on this topic, so feel free to send in your comments, as many as you can, so we can have a full and lively discussion with Miss Hill here. Now, on the topic of, all right, let me tell you a question from Vanessa Silvera. She's saying that the adoption process is so many O's, so long and drawn out, and I think that's a general perception out there. How do you respond to that?
And that's a misperception. Persons need to differentiate between coming to us having identified a child for adoption. So let's say you want to adopt your niece that you've been caring for. Now they need to differentiate that process from a person who is coming to us requesting a child. Right, so those who are requesting children from us, that's where the weight will come in. But if you come to us having identified a child, as I said, the process can be done within 3 to 6 months.
No, I may ask you this: how often is adoption a popular thing in Jamaica, for lack of a better word? Do you find a lot of adoptions happening? On average, how many do you think we do per year? Or how do you see, depending in your western region? Because I suppose you have the full information.
But we do a good amount per year. I couldn't really provide an exact figure, but adoption is it's getting more popular, because what persons have discovered is that in order to do anything legal on a child's behalf, you must be mother, father, legal guardian, or an adoptive parent. So it has become much more popular over the years, because persons have realized that there are just certain limitations in terms of having a child, just caring for a child informally.
Okay, now differentiator, I mean, we've established that adoption is different from fostering.
Right.
Now, how popular is fostering as an option? Persons may not necessarily go the full adoption route, but how in your experience, how popular is fostering?
Foster care is quite popular. There are many foster parents. There are hundreds of foster parents island-wide. So I think on a parade there may be like over 100 in St. James. So it's really popular. What some persons may tend to want to foster because they can't wait on.
So how is it then? It sounds to me like it's easier to foster than it is to adopt.
Well, what you have to understand is that children who are fostered are not necessarily free for adoption. So definitely it's going to be easier. You'll have a much shorter wait time. To foster a child, as you know, there you would complete an application form, submit references, passport size photos, and we also do the necessary home assessment too. So some persons really will do foster care because they're saying, hey, I can't wait this long for a child to adopt. So foster care is really
so
popular.
I mean, maybe I'm just a little unclear about what's the real difference there. I mean, I understand that, we understand theoretically that the child still remains the child of their biological parent, and we get that. But I mean, it seems like if they foster do that, does that foster child live with the foster family and live, and that foster family has care and protection and control over that child?
The foster family has the direct everyday care and control of that child. However, remember that that child is still a ward of the state. So we are primarily we are responsible for the child. So we have to do all necessary checks. We still have to go check at school. If that foster parent wants to take that child overseas, permission has to be granted. So they'd get a letter from the program's director to take to the embassy, even to process a passport for the child. Now, when you adopt a child, you don't need anything because you are the legal parent for the child.
All right. So, I mean, it seems to me like, is the foster process shorter?
It is shorter. It is shorter because, as I said, there are more children who are available for foster care than adoption. Remember, adoption is a legal process. Now, with foster care, we don't need consent from birth parents because at the end of the day, those children are not the legal children of the foster parents. They're still wards of the state. So it's definitely a shorter process.
All right. Now, let me check and see online and see if we have any questions so far. A lot of persons just sharing information on the timeline about the foster versus the adoption process. Thank you, people, for your input. I mean, it at least can benefit those of us who are tuning in late, and they might be able to get information secondhand, which is great. And if you have any more questions or comments specifically about the adoption process in Jamaica, feel free to share them. We welcome them. We wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. Miss Hill is right here. Ask her all the questions that you have. Now, in terms of the process itself, all right, let me ask you these questions I have. How do you check the background of those trying to adopt, and especially those who live outside of Jamaica? What kind of efforts do you check to make sure that we're sending our children home to persons with good character? And so on?
For persons who are overseas, we get what is called a home study. Now, a home study must be completed by a Hague accredited agency. A home study is a complete, when you take up a home study, you're basically getting information, everything you need to know about this person, their background, where they were born, the jobs they have done. We also get police, we also get that police record. So we really get a complete study that provides us with all the information, educational background, parenting skills, everything. So since we are not able to do that, we get all that information in the home study.
One thing I was reading is that I think you may have touched on it earlier, but just to elaborate, that a relative or a family member, maybe a direct family member, can adopt another member of the family just to make things easier. Elaborate on that for me.
All right. Are you talking locally or in terms of going overseas?
We can do both as well.
Okay. All right. With Jamaica, most persons have been caring for their relatives, some of them from birth.
Siblings or cousins or things like
that. A lot of them we have found that over time, most persons have been coming to us saying that I've been caring for this child, but I can't put her on my health insurance. I can't take her to the embassy. Every time I go away, I have to leave her. So I want to make this official. Right. So we do adoptions like those. We also have family members now who are overseas, who they may say, hey, I have a cousin or I have a sister, she has some kids and she's having a really hard time and I really want to assist. Now, those persons can also adopt. However, for the United States, we need persons to understand that if that child does not qualify as an orphan for the United States, then it's going to be very difficult for them to get that child overseas. Not for us to process the adoption necessarily, but for them to get approval by United States Citizenship and Immigration Services.
So why that specific classification as orphan?
United States, I honestly think they do not want persons to use adoption as a means of migration.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So a number of persons will come to us wanting to adopt a family member, but yet the child has mother and father here. Some of them even live with the parents. Some of them parents are gainfully employed. So by using that, what they're doing is ensuring that when a child is adopted, it's in the best interest of the child, not just for the child to come and live in the United States.
Now, we've been talking about this topic and we haven't necessarily been looking at it from the perspective of the adopting persons, but let's flip and take a look at things from the perspective of, I suppose, the children or those who are being adopted. Now, what are some of the things, without necessarily giving answers away and something like that, what are some of the things that you look for to demonstrate an ideal fit with a parent or a group or, couple, single person, whoever that is trying to adopt a child?
So in terms of us placing a child,
right. So how do you see and how do you determine from your organization's perspective that this might be a workable fit?
All right. So first of all, that person would have already sent in all their references, police record, and all that, and everything like that. Then, as you know, the child is placed with them on the approval of the adoption board. So remember, we allow that person to first meet the child, then spend some time, maybe a weekend or two with the child, after which the board approves the placement of the child in the home. So when we visit, what we actually look for is, one, how is the child functioning? So we really observe the interaction between the child and the adoptive parents. We also ask questions such as social development. How does the child get along with everybody else? Is there anything that you notice? Does the child sleep well at night? Stuff like, what about appetite? Does he eat well? So is this child functioning at the level at which he or she should be functioning? So basically, it's just really observing and really determining if this child is adjusting well. And you'll know, because a child cannot pretend to be happy. A child cannot pretend to be comfortable. So it's really sometimes you just know. And most of our children, it would seem as though they were just made for these families.
All right, let me take a question from Claudette Tulladale. If you want to adopt a child but the person lives abroad, what's the process like? I assume that means if you live in Jamaica and you have a child who may live in America and you want to adopt that child, does that process change here? Or
remember, we only do adoption for Jamaican citizens. For children, right. For a child to adopt, a child must be a Jamaican citizen.
I just wanted to know if you had any involvement in that process at all.
No, sir. We don't have that jurisdiction for a child who is born overseas. But I don't know if that's exactly what she's asking, or if she wants to know if the applicant lives overseas. But as I said, they would go online.
Just rehash, because we did
right, so they would go online, www.childprotection.gov.jm, download all the forms, and the guideline will tell you all the supporting documents that are needed. They would submit those documents to us, and then we will do all the necessary interviews.
Now, I suppose this is kind of a difficult question, but let me ask it all the same. Let's say a parent goes through the adoption process and, at the end of it determines that this may not necessarily have been something that they should have done. Is there a process to reverse or terminate? It does have to ask that question.
Right. All right. Let me first say, the parent has the opportunity up to the point of the matter going before the court. So even after they have given their written consent, they still have the option of saying up to the point where the matter goes before the court. Now, for a reversal, which is what you're asking, that can only be done by the court. And they will have to have extremely good reason. Now remember, if you are surrendering your child for adoption, you will have been interviewed, you would have been counseled, it would have been thoroughly explained that by surrendering your child for adoption, you are basically giving up all your parental rights. So they go through that extensive process. So if after an adoption is done, then that's something they would have to petition the court. It's not
that cut
no,
and dry.
no. Remember, adoption is a legal process, and there's finality in terms of this is permanence for the child.
Now let me ask you again about let's say the parent is doing the adopting and maybe their circumstances change, or the person goes through the process, adopts a child, and then has a drastic reversal in their circumstances. Maybe a spouse dies, maybe something unusual happens that, and can that person decide that, okay, I want to not go through this anymore?
I mean, you're talking before it's been formalized?
No, after. I mean, having taken on that child and adopting that child and making that child. I'm just asking.
Okay, so I have adopted this child.
Right. And then maybe something happens, that spouse dies, or, God forbid something really terrible happens, and you might find yourself, for example, in a vegetative state or something like that happens. Is it as simple as somebody else just comes and adopts the child, or is it something that you can again say, okay, you know what, in the best interest of the child,
right? Because
remember, I should move the child on to somebody else.
No, they can't move the child on to somebody.
With the CPFA's assistance.
All right, remember now that it's a legal process that you have gone through. So legally, you are now responsible for this child. And as you say, if something drastic has happened, then if there is no other option, all right, for single applicants, we have them do what is called a letter of responsibility, which says if they become incapacitated or if they die, this person will accept full responsibility for the child. So then that person could go on then and adopt that child. But as I said, it's a legal process, so it's not just really handing over.
All right, I guess we've having persons that rehash questions, but we're going to go back through it all the same. Dion Salome Smith, she's asking, if I live in the UK and I want to adopt my disabled niece, I want to have her disabled niece join her, is the process, you've outlined, let's rehash the process again.
All right,
does the process change for persons with special needs or disabilities?
No, not necessarily, but in terms of the country, for the UK, we do not steer the process. For the UK, they have to go through the Department of Education and go to the division that deals with inter-country adoptions. They really direct the process. Now, when they go to that department, they will assess them, and if they deem them fit, they will issue a certificate of eligibility to them, after which they will forward their documents to us for us to process the adoption. But we can't start the process for persons who live in the UK.
Okay, so this is just a special circumstance
for
persons
UK
in the UK
and Canada. Also for Canada, especially those in Toronto, we can't steer the process. For Canada, persons have to visit Worldview or Cornerstone for those who live in the Toronto area, and start their process there. Having found them suitable, then they forward documents to us and require of us to do interviews with the child and so on, and then submit that information to them. But it's a process, but we don't steer the process for UK and Canada. Okay.
Now, what about support services? You're a parent, you're going through the adoption process, but does the CPFSA provide support services that help you, I suppose, become a better parent or develop better abilities to raise a child? Talk about that for me.
You're talking about support for adoptive parents? Or?
Right. Yes.
Sure, there is training that we do in terms of providing information for adoptive parents, telling them what to expect, going through different stages of development in terms of the children. Because remember that children who are in state care, they are special. Children, there are special circumstances where they have had to come into care. So there is training that we do as part of the preparation process for adoptive parents.
Right. I would imagine that, in many cases there might be children who have, antisocial situations because they might be coming from very difficult and challenging backgrounds.
And persons
preparing parents
they need to be
understand and deal with
prepared.
that.
Right. And they also need to understand that as soon as there's anything that they think does not seem right, they need to access the resources, whether it's a psychologist, but not to stay there or not to just throw up hands and say, hey, but they need to understand that these children are special. They're coming from various backgrounds, so they have to understand that this child may not just be such an easy child to deal with. So they have to understand that there will be challenges and they have to be prepared to deal with the challenges if they arise.
All right, so talk to me about, you mentioned psychological or counseling and things like that. If a person finds themselves, in that situation where they might, because I've heard these stories before, adopting a child and the child just, for whatever reason has a lot of antisocial tendencies, just won't listen, thief, doing all kinds of things. Of course, these things happen. So, from a practical perspective, what would you advise a parent like that?
All right, the agency has psychologists. But having adopted a child, that child is legally your child. So, it's just for them to know that they can access, don't be ashamed, they can access the necessary help because there are psychologists, there are psychiatrists, there's a child guidance clinic. So, if you see any behavior that does not seem normal, then there is help out there.
All right, we've gone well over our usual time, and we thank everybody who has stuck around with us and listened and paying attention. I'm just going to give the final word to you. I want you to talk to persons about the adoption process and why they should consider it as, persons who are looking to expand their family and might be inclined to do so. Give them all the reasons why they should.
Adoption is a wonderful program. Right. What adoption does, it provides permanence for a child. So that child has found a home, this child has found a permanent family. This is where I belong. So we do encourage persons adopt, and basically you're really giving back and you're providing a permanent home for a child. You're providing a stable family for a child, and that child could be the next prime minister. You never know.
All right. And once again, just to tackle that issue again, persons who think the process is long, drawn out, you're saying that this is not necessarily so. Right. Just rehash that for me. Let them know that
there's a difference. We understand for persons who are on the waiting list, the wait time may be a bit longer, but for those who actually come to us with a child, let's say a family member that they want to adopt, that process can be completed within 3 to 6 months. The process may be long for those who are waiting because, as I've said before, we do not have as many children available for adoption as we have applicants, so it may take a longer time. But we're making progress.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Lisa Hill, she's the adoption officer for the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, responsible for the western side of the island. Which parish is, just in case persons might want to?
St. James, Trelawney, Hanover, and Westmoreland.
All right, and she's giving us all the information on the adoption process. We know many of you have asked, so we have answered the call, provided the information. You can access it. As a matter of fact, share with them the website and contact details that you have.
It is www.childprotection.gov.jm. And you click on adoption, all the information is there. You can also feel free to contact any of our parish offices. Also the adoption unit, which is housed at the 48 Duke Street location. That's 922-1751. Or you can email me at hill, Hill, at childprotection.gov.jm. All
right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope we have provided the information that you wanted. I hope we have hit the issue right on the head, so that, and if not, just don't be afraid to send us some more questions, some more comments. You can always get in touch with Miss Hill or have her get in touch with you, so you can provide all the information that you need. We really thank you for tuning in. Now it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really, really do appreciate it. And if you send in a question and we didn't answer it in our discussion, not to worry. We will be going back through and we'll be answering. As I said, we can get in touch with Miss Hill and provide answers that you need. Remember that our audience plays a major part in our show. If there is anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, let us know and we'll try our best to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.